First of all, welcome to all of you. Welcome Yogesh for joining us for this webinar. और हमें उम्मीद है कि हमारे सारे लिसनर्स के लिए दिस विल बी वेरी यूजफुल। तो सबसे पहले हम लोग एक इंट्रोडक्शन से शुरुआत करते हैं। आज मेरे साथ हैं योगेश। योगेश गुड़गांव से बिलोंग करते हैं। उसके बाद उन्होंने बीटेक किया और बीटेक करने के बाद वो 2 साल एक मेजर टेलीकॉम कंपनी के साथ थे यूएस की, जहां पे एज ए सॉफ्टवेयर डेवलपर वो काम करते थे। जिसके बाद उन्होंने IIM अहमदाबाद से MBA किया। हम लोगों का 1 साल IIM अहमदाबाद में ओवरलैप भी था। उसके बाद योगेश ने एयरटेल ज्वाइन किया। योगेश ने 7 अलग अलग डिस्ट्रिक्ट्स के लोगों को हैंडल किया, जहां पर ओवर 100 फील्ड ऑफिसर्स उनको रिपोर्ट करते थे, इनडायरेक्टली और डायरेक्टली या इनडायरेक्टली, और कुल 150 लोग उन्हें रिपोर्ट करते थे, उनकी टीम में थे, जहां पर उन्होंने सेल्स ऑपरेशंस कई चीजों के बारे में सीखा। और आजकल योगेश बर्लिन में है, ज़ालैंडो करके एक ई-कॉमर्स जायंट के साथ, जो कि एक बहुत बड़ी कंपनी है। तो फर्स्ट ऑफ ऑल योगेश, थैंक यू फॉर ज्वाइनिंग अस एंड थैंक यू टू एवरीवन फॉर ज्वाइनिंग अस। योगेश, why don't you tell us a little bit more about आपकी लाइफ की स्टोरी?
Thanks, Rahil, first of all, for the introduction. And well, you've covered almost everything. I started out as a software engineer, and then after worked as a software engineer for 2 years, I went for my MBA. And after my MBA, I worked in sales for some time before moving to product-based roles. And currently also at Zalando, I'm in a product-based role where I'm handling the customer conversion on an e-commerce platform. It's a major fashion e-commerce platform. But still, apart from that, I would like to say thank you for inviting me, and kudos to you and your Alpha team for this venture. I believe there's a clear need for such organizations that help young folks understand the right skills required for the jobs of this decade. And this market is very different from 10 years ago. I was working in 2013, and the skills that were required to get a foot in different organizations were very different from what they are today. And in that context, your work becomes extremely essential. And so mostly you've told them about my history and what I've done. When I was working in sales, I had a team where from time to time, 7 or 8 people directly reported to me, which were territory sales manager. But usually in a sales organization, it is set up in a way that territory sales managers, they are responsible for distributors in different districts. So my team had 7 or 8 territory managers at a time, and they would work with 40 odd distributors, and then those distributors would have field sales executives in the field, and those 40 distributors would have roughly 90 to 100 people. So the whole team was around 150 people, and it covered 7 districts in Assam, like Rahil just mentioned. So firstly, whatever I would say here today, whatever discussion that we are going to have, this is based on my experience, and there are no rules or frameworks here. So I just want to make that clear from the beginning. And if I start going into the Gyan territory, please feel free to interrupt me, Rahil, and you can ask me for specifics. And I know a lot of our listeners are first-time job seekers who want to get a glimpse into the industry. And I would keep my answers consumable to that audience. मैं बहुत ज़्यादा deep business में नहीं जाना चाहूँगा आज. I would try to keep it in a way कि आपको glimpse मिले उस in businesses का, in roles का, जिससे आपको एक basic understanding हो about the kind of setup of the organization, the kind of skills that you need to get a foot into these roles. And whatever worked for me, it might not work for you, or it can work 2 times better for you than it did for me. So nothing that we discuss here is science, and I would encourage you to doubt it and ask questions about anything that doesn't sit right with you.
Thank you, Yogesh. Once again with the dose of humility. जब भी मैं योगेश से मिलता हूँ तो मुझे लगता है योगेश इज अ वेरी हम्बल गाय। पर हाँ, ऐसा है कि कई बार व्हेन यू आर डूइंग समथिंग ऑन द ग्राउंड, तो यू गेन द एक्सपीरियंस, जिससे कि जो बाहर के लोग हैं उनको पता ही नहीं रहता है। तो इट्स एक डिफरेंट पैराडाइम होता है, एक डिफरेंट दुनिया होती है जिन लोगों ने देखा नहीं होता है। तो मैं चाहता हूँ कि उस दुनिया के कुछ सीक्रेट्स आप शेयर करें हमारे लिसनर्स के साथ। और जैसे कि हम लोगों ने डिस्कस किया कि काफी लोग यहाँ पर हमारे पास वैसे हैं जो कि फर्स्ट टाइम एक जॉब सीख कर रहे हैं, जो कॉलेज में है और उनको सोचना है कि हमें क्या करना है। कई लोग बोलते हैं कि अच्छा हमें तो ऑफिस जॉब चाहिए या फिर गवर्नमेंट जॉब चाहिए। सेल्स में काफी ऑफर्स आते हैं फिर लेकिन लोगों को लगता है कि यार सेल्स का मतलब तो ऐसा होता है कि भाई मैं क्या लोगों के दुकान घर घर जाके उनको नॉक करूंगा और मैं उनको सामान बेचूंगा। तो लोगों को सेल्स का मतलब थोड़ा कम समझ में आता है। तो मैं समझना चाहता हूँ आपसे, आपने एयरटेल में काम किया और एयरटेल इज अ ट्रिमेंडस ऑर्गेनाइजेशन, बहुत अच्छी ऑर्गेनाइजेशन है। तो उनका जो सेल्स का या FMCG का जो मार्केट है, उसका स्ट्रक्चर वो कैसे बनाते हैं ऑर्गेनाइजेशन का? जैसे आपने बताया कि आपको कुछ लोग रिपोर्ट करते थे, तो इस बारे में आप थोड़ा और लाइट शेड कर सकते हैं इस चीज पे कि कैसे ऑर्गेनाइजेशन स्ट्रक्चर्ड रहता है। पहली चीज तो ये। और दूसरी चीज, पहले कुछ और होता था, अब कोरोना के बाद चीजें काफी चेंज हो गई हैं, तो चीजें थोड़ा चेंज हो रही हैं, हर जगह टेक्नोलॉजी आ रही है, तो कैसे इस तरह से ऑर्गेनाइजेशंस चेंज हो रही हैं जिससे वो टेक्नोलॉजी को लेवरेज कर सकें?
That's a good question, Rahil, and especially something that your listeners need to know and need to understand. So sales is nowadays, sales is not what it used to be 20, 25 years ago. And also it's not door to door sales anymore. I know there are some organizations which still depend on that, but that doesn't usually happen. And today's sales roles are more under the umbrella of sales and operations roles. So I can give you a brief understanding of how sales organizations are set up. So this is, and majorly my understanding comes from telecom. So a lot of this should be taken in that context. But in the telecom business, the telecom prepaid business is very similar to any FMCG business. Selling telecom recharge is very similar to selling a soap. Essentially, you have to get your product to the retailers out there, to the shops out there. So it's very similar to that. Let me share my screen and help you understand the hierarchy a bit. Structure that you see, it's usually followed by almost all sales organizations in the country. We'll start from the left. So there's usually a firm. There's usually a firm which has a product that it needs to sell. Then that firm would have its state entities. We're talking about a national level firm which wants to sell its product in all the 29, 30 states. And they would usually have state entities. The state entities would deal with super distributors who buy stuff from them and they keep it in their warehouses. And then the super distributors distribute to local distributors who are good people in different districts of the states. And then those local distributors, they sell that stuff to retailers, and from the retailers, it finally goes to your customers. And when you look at the organization hierarchy corresponding to this particular sales hierarchy, it's something like this. So you would have a chief operating officer under which usually the sales organization in most firms. And then at state level, you have state sales head. And then there are zonal or regional managers who are reporting to a state sales head. And then there are territory sales managers who report into a zonal sales manager. And then you have field sales executives. There is this inverted Z here, which is an exciting and interesting part of this job, because in this job, you have to work with people who essentially you have to get work done from people who are not reporting to you, who are not in your hierarchy. And that's where a lot of your soft skills come into play. So I had this role of a zonal business manager, a zonal regional manager, and there were territory sales managers reporting to me. And this dotted line means that the territory sales managers were managing roughly 40 distributors. But when I say managing, it's not that the distributors reported to them. By managing, I mean that they were looking after a territory which had these local distributors. And it was their job to make sure that these distributors had Airtels at all times, that distributors were also making money from Airtel, and that their profit was also growing month on month. Because only when they're making money with us, only when their profit is growing with us, they will be happy to sell our stock. So the role of this territory sales manager is to manage the revenue of these local distributors. And these local distributors, then they hire the field sales executives. The field sales executives, they are impacted by two different streams of incomes. So one is directly coming from local distributors and another is coming from the firm. The firm has incentives for field sales executives based on the amount of the product that they're selling to the retailers. So the field sales executives are people who go out into the streets, they go out to the shops, and then they ask the retailer how much of a good they want. If it's a soap making company, they would just go and try to push the soap of their brand. Similarly, if it's a recharge company like Airtel, then they would just go to the retailers and they would ask them how much of a recharge do you need, how much do you want, and then based on the amount of recharge they're selling, we would have incentives for those. So this is how the whole hierarchy looks like for most of the sales organizations. And even though times are changing, even though technology has come in, but the offline business is still organized in this way only. Now, to answer your second question, Rahil, which was about the changes that are coming in, how is this hierarchy different these days? So before explaining that, I would again go back into the analogy of selling soap. So the business of selling prepaid recharges is very similar to the business of selling soap. So you need to get the soap out to the stores. Only then a customer will come and they will see this X soap in your shop and then they'll buy. Now there are roughly 15 to 20 lakh shops in the country who are selling soaps. But similarly, there are roughly 10 lakh shops in the country which are selling recharges. And our job is to get our stock into those 10 lakh stores out there in the market. And now when I talk about stock, I'm only talking about prepaid business. So the telecom business is divided into postpaid and prepaid. And the split is roughly 95% to 5%. 95% of the business in the country is prepaid business. Now, when you think about the number of mobile subscribers in India, it would be roughly 106, 107 crore people. And when I talk about 95% business being prepaid, so roughly 100 crore people have a prepaid SIM. And if they are having a recharge of 150 bucks per month, then that means a monthly business of 15,000 crores and a yearly business of 1,80,000 crores. That's the total prepaid market. And now this 1,80,000 crore is now divided into online and offline business. So there were times when this entire business was offline, when the only way you can get a prepaid recharge was going to a retail store and asking your kirana wala bhaiya that 100 रुपए का रिचार्ज दे दो मुझे इतने का दे दो बेस्ट टॉक टाइम बता दो and वो रिचार्ज आप करवाते थे. But now there is a big shift there. So as of today, 60% to 65% of recharges are happening online and only 35-40% recharges are happening through those retail stores. So how does that impact the business of sales? It has impacted the revenue of your distributors. It has impacted the revenue of your retailers. Because from the hierarchy that I just shown you, when we sell something to the distributor gets a 2% margin on whatever we are selling to them. And similarly, when a retailer sells the same item to the customer, they get a 4% margin on that item. So if the whole online shift is reducing the amount of recharge they can sell, it is reducing the amount of money they can make from us. So in a way, what has happened in the last 4 to 5 years with the growth of app-based economy, with the growth of wallets, it has become easier to pay or recharge your phone online. And that has led to a clear fall in revenue for your distributors and a clear fall in revenue for your retailers. And that has forced the business to think in a way to generate new income sources for your distributors, for your retailers, to keep them engaged with you. If somebody is not earning from you, then what is the incentive for them to keep working for you? If your distributor is not earning as much as they used to earn 4 to 5 years ago, then what's the incentive for the distributor to keep 5 to 7 to 10 field sales executives on their payroll? And this is where the changes have started to come in. The future of sales in a way, sales operations in a way, is about leveraging the strong presence on the ground into something which is a use case for the future. Like I said, app-based businesses are coming up. Smartphone penetration in the country is going up. And that's where it has started to bring in new kind of businesses to kind of give us support to their distributors and field sales executives in the market. One similar kind of business is Airtel Payments Bank, which is in a way, which is a digital bank, and many of you might have heard of it. Competes with Paytm. It's not as popular as Paytm or some other wallets, but it's essentially a wallet. It's a payments bank. Now, what Airtel tried to do was it tried to supplement our distributors and field sales executives' income with this. Now, we started giving incentives to our distributors and retailers based on how many new customers they're onboarding on Airtel Payments Bank. We started giving commissions to our field sales executives based on how many QR codes they are putting into the stores where they were previously going to just sell a recharge. But now they have this additional responsibility of putting a QR code there. The more number of QR codes they put into these shops, the more easier it becomes for the eventual customers of Airtel Payment Bank to make a payment in that shop without using hard cash. So this is what the business is going towards. Now, when the share of online is increasing and the share of offline is decreasing, then they found a new way to keep their distributors engaged, to keep their retailers engaged with them, and to keep supplementing their income through different means. This was just such example, and many firms are doing it in a different way. And how it changes sales is that it also asks a lot of the people who are managing distributors or managing retailers or managing the field sales executives. Because previously your product used to be a physical product. It would be a soap, it would be a recharge in case of Airtel, but now you're selling an idea of digital currency. Now you're selling an idea which is new. And that's why it has become very, very essential for people in sales and operations to know their product. It was easier 10 years ago, but it's difficult today, because today a salesman needs to be capable of explaining to the retailer that, see, this is my product, this is my wallet. And you need to know why your wallet is better than anything that's out there. So you need to know a lot about your product. You need to be a master of your product. You need to be able to pitch that digital product to your retailer, to your distributor, so that then they will get onboarded and they will work for you. So a lot is changing in terms of what you're selling. And what you're selling is becoming more complex. And that's why it needs a little more study on your behalf to understand that product. And I think a major change in the last few years has been this only, that from the traditional sales organizations, which was selling physical products, we're moving into more of digital organization, which are also selling digital products. And it's not just a wallet app. So Airtel also has different apps like Wink Music or something like that. And we also give our retailers and our field sales executives for number of installs in a customer's phone. But there also, if you don't understand why Wink is better than Spotify, why Wink is better than Savan, why Wink is better than any other music app, you will not be able to convince your retailers of the same, and essentially they will not be able to convince your customers of the same. The horizons of what you need to understand are broadening, and the next products which are coming in are digital products, and all digital products are not being sold online. It's not all inbound organic growth that is coming in. A lot of the push is happening offline. So when you see an app which says that we have 100 million downloads, don't believe that all those downloads came from digital marketing. There are people out there who are going to retail stores every day, and these big organizations have started giving them different KPIs. So Airtel has a lot. Airtel would have, let's say, an army of over 100,000 field sales executives in the field. And if we are asking them that you will get $50 extra if you install 2 apps per day into a customer's phone, and they're doing it. If 100,000 people are installing 2 apps, that's 200,000 apps per day, which is coming through an inorganic growth rate. Now, how many customers retain that app? How many of them like that app? It's a different thing altogether. But the mechanics of getting it installed are changing. And this is a change which I think is coming with every single organization. And these big organizations are trying to find a way to leverage the force that they have on the ground to compete in today's digital world, and to compete and also have an advantage. So this advantage is not there with the new organizations which are light on their feet. They have to depend a lot on digital marketing. They have to depend a lot on organic growth. But these giants like Airtel and other telecom firms, they can do it much more quickly, because they can get this inorganic growth, the help of the staff they have on the ground. That's kind of it. That's not the whole picture of what is changing, but that gives you some idea of how operations are different today.
योगेश, बहुत सारे सवाल पूछने हैं मुझे आपसे, लेकिन एक फॉलोअप क्वेश्चन जो सबसे पहले पूछना चाहता हूँ वो ये है कि अगर कोई एक यंग कॉलेज ग्रेजुएट है जो कॉलेज के फाइनल ईयर में है, या फिर जिसने कॉलेज खत्म किया है और अभी जॉब ढूंढ रहा है 1-2 साल में, जिसने ग्रेजुएट किया है, वो अगर ज्वाइन करना चाहता है ऐसी किसी ऑर्गेनाइजेशन को, तो वो किस तरह के रोल में ज्वाइन करेगा?
So there are, I guess, 2 kind of entry level roles, and a territory sales manager, I guess, is the most apt role for somebody who is coming freshly out of the college. And it depends. There are organizations which will ask for some kind of an MBA before a territory sales manager role, but most of them don't. So you can get into those roles where you have 1 or 2 distributors to manage. So there are multiple kinds of territory sales managers also. So under me, there were territory sales managers and there were rural territory sales managers. So an urban territory sales manager would be managing 3 or 4 big distributors, and every distributor would have, let's say, a revenue or a turnover of over 1.5 to 2 crores. So an urban territory sales manager can be managing a business of 5 to 6 crores per month. But a rural territory sales manager, on the other hand, they would have more number of distributors spread out on a larger geographical area. That person might have 10 to 12 villages under them. And then those villages will have a smaller distributor. Every village will have 1 distributor who's managing a business of 10 to 15 lakhs. So these are the kind of rules which are open to new joiners in sales. And probably you will start as a rural distributor. But when I say rural distributor, it's not that they will ask you to go work in a different state in a village somewhere. So when I say rural, it's it means outskirts of urban. So if you talk about Gurgaon is an urban territory, but just on the outskirts of Gurgaon, you would have Manesar, and Manesar is considered to be a rural territory in terms of the revenue that it brings in. But it's not actually a rural place. So I would say that the territory sales manager role is one of the entry-level roles for these kind of organizations.
Okay, तो मतलब अगर वही जैसे तो उसका मतलब ये हुआ कि वो चौमू या कालाडेरा इस तरह के जो आसपास छोटे सबर्ब्स हैं उनमें जाके वो काम करेगा.
Yeah, they would start there, and I think I've seen people जो 1 से 1.5 साल में वो move from rural territory sales managers to urban territory sales managers.
Okay, तो आपकी जर्नी के बारे में एक बार फिर से मैं थोड़ा पूछना चाहता हूँ, और वो ये है कि एयरटेल में आपका रोल काफी सेल्स रिलेटेड था, पर इसमें सेल्स के साथ मुझे ऐसा लग रहा है कि ऑपरेशंस भी काफी इन्वॉल्व है. तो ये सेल्स और ऑपरेशंस का क्या मिक्स एंड मैच है, और कितना परसेंटेज सेल्स है, कितना परसेंटेज ऑपरेशंस है, इस बारे में आप थोड़ा बताएंगे.
Okay. So in big firms like Airtel, which is a telecom firm, or even firms like HUL and PNG, a lot of sales is done by ops people. And when I say ops, so ops is about getting your product to the store. It's about logistics, it's about supply chain, it's about distribution. And why ops people are the ones who are also managing sales in this organization is because they are the ones who are closest to the customer. They are the ones who are closest to the distributors. So if you have a distribution system already in place, then let's say you have a product, you have 10 distributors in the state. Now those 10 distributors can reach to 100 retailers, and they will be able to sell your product. So this, if you are just maintaining that, that's ops. If you're just supplying what those 10 distributors need, and if you're supplying what those 100 retailers need, you're just doing ops. But if you're also finding a way to improve the need for your product in that area, which increases the billing for your retailer, which increases the billing for your distributor, then you're doing sales. So I would tell you my major KPIs when I was working in that role. I was asked to improve the overall revenue for the districts that I was managing, and I was asked to improve the market share of the districts that I was managing. So if Airtel has 37% market share in any district, and if I was asked to move it to 40%, essentially I'm also increasing the revenue for my distributors and increasing the revenue for my retailers as well. So that's where the sales part comes in. The sales part is about selling your product to more and more number of people. Now you have to find ways to do it. You have to understand your market, then you try to find ways of increasing your market share. So that's the differentiation. Operations is about setting up the system which kind of does what's already happening, and you have to maintain that also. There are hard times when even maintaining the sales becomes important, but then selling on top of it, increasing the revenue, increasing market share is something that I would call sales. I can give some example for it. So like I said, I had two major KPIs, which was increasing revenue and increasing market share. But one of the major skill of any person in sales is understanding the input KPIs, which will help you move your output KPIs. And this is something that you learn when you're working. So I always say that start with data, start understanding the data of your territory, and then intuition will follow. If from the first day you go by intuition, then it becomes a bit messy. Now let me try to think of something. So
मतलब ये जैसे अगर मैं आपसे पूछूं कि तो इस तरह के रोल के लिए स्किल्स क्या चाहिए, तो आपने बोला कि इनिशियली इंट्यूशन नहीं, इनिशियली दे हैव टू गो विद डेटा. पर अगर किसी को इस तरह के रोल में एंट्री चाहिए, बिकॉज यही एक बर्निंग क्वेश्चन है हमारे लिसनर्स के लिए कि भाई ओके, अगर मैं चाहता हूं कि ऐसी किसी कंपनी में मैं ज्वाइन करूं, कोई एफएमसीजी कंपनी हुई, कोई टेलीकॉम कंपनी हुई, तो मैं क्या कर सकता हूं जिससे कि मैं इस तरह के रोल में जा सकूं. इसके लिए मुझे क्या स्किल्स की जरूरत है, जिसमें आप ये भी बता सकते हैं किन हार्ड स्किल्स की जरूरत है, किन सॉफ्ट स्किल्स की जरूरत है. जैसा आपने बताया कि अब प्रोडक्ट थोड़ा कॉम्प्लिकेटेड हो गया. इफ यू आर सेलिंग अ डिजिटल प्रोडक्ट, तो आपको बहुत अच्छे से समझने की जरूरत है, और वो शायद एक्सप्लेन करना इज मोर डिफिकल्ट देन कि अच्छा ठीक है साबुन है तो साबुन है, इसमें अच्छी खुशबू आती है, अच्छी सफाई करता है, एक्सेट्रा. पर अगर आप कोई ऐप एक्सप्लेन कर रहे हैं, तो उसके फीचर्स अगर आप एक्सप्लेन कर रहे हैं, दैट्स अ लिटिल बिट मोर कॉम्प्लिकेटेड. तो क्या आप इस बारे में थोड़ा और बता सकते हैं क्या हार्ड और क्या सॉफ्ट स्किल्स की जरूरत है इस तरह के एक रोल के लिए?
Okay, so I would continue with the previous example that I was explaining, and उसी से हम hard and soft skills में भी चले जाएंगे. कि example था कि I had two major KPIs, and If I was asked to improve revenue and I was asked to improve the market share of my territory, then how do I go about doing it? Then understanding data and then working on it is a very important step. Now, I would look into my data and I would try to understand how do I improve my customer market share. And you can improve customer market share in multiple ways. एक तो आप gain कर सकते हो a higher share in the new customers who are coming into the market. Let's say if there are 100 people who are buying a new connection in a month, then if your market share in that 100 people is 35%, then if you move it from 35 to 40 or 50, then essentially that flows into the overall market share of the territory. So you can increase your share of new customers coming to the market, or you can convert competition customers to your customer. In telecom, that can happen through a mobile number portability. In FMCG, that can happen by getting people to switch their brands. If somebody is using, let's say, Lux, you can ask them if you move them to your different brand, like something like Fowler or anything like that. So these are two ways of increasing your market share. Now, once I know that I have to increase, let's say, one of these things, let's say I'm trying to get a higher share of new customers coming to the market, then I get into my data, that district-wise data, to understand where is it that the new customers are coming. If you can catch the new customers at the point of sale, then you have a higher chance of converting them. And in telecom, we used to get shop level data. We found that roughly 60% of the new activations are happening at smartphone stores. And why is that? It could very easily be that people who are buying a new smartphone are also buying a new SIM at the same time. Now you've understood that this is how I try to win more market share. I place more people, more promoters from Airtel, or people who are trying to sell my SIM, or people who understand the benefits of my network, and then they tell it to the customer at the point of sale where they're buying a new smartphone. So from the data, you've understood this, but you need to have the capability to understand that data, and some of the hard skills come from that. I would give a second example also. Let's say if you're trying to increase revenue. If you're trying to increase revenue, it means you're trying to increase the sales that are happening at a distributor level and at a retailer level. There again, you go back to your data and you try to find out which of the retailers or distributors does not have a good sale. And for example, when I did that, I found out that there were a lot of stockouts happening at some retailers or some distributors. Now, a stockout in an FMCG term is if the retailer is out of soap to sell. If the shop doesn't have soap, the person will come and he'll take a different recharge, a different brand of soap. So similarly, these days, everyone has a Vodafone SIM, a Jio SIM, and an Airtel SIM. So if they're coming to a shop and if they don't have the recharge of your brand, then they would just recharge a different network provider for that month. Now, from looking at the data, we understood which retailers were having stockouts. And then we pushed our field sales executives to work on those retailers and to improve the amount of stock that was available in the market. So in my territory, we improved it from 2 days to 4 days. So every day in the morning when I wake up, I see the numbers that, okay, market still has a stock that would last for 4 days if no new billing was done in the next 4 days. Now, what do you need to be able to look into the data? These are very fundamental, very basic skills that you need to work on. MS Excel is one of those things. You must have heard it everywhere. It's a life-saving tool, and you would have to work on it a lot. So salespeople, they spend half their day on MS Excel. Then understanding marketing fundamentals is one such thing. What is go-to-market planning? What is inbound marketing? What is outbound marketing? How do you plan events which can give you a burst of growth when you need them? PowerPoint is one such tool. It will help you communicate well to your distributors, to your retailers, and also to your managers. Understanding income sheet and balance statements. Balance sheets is very important for even a sales role, because essentially you're working to improve the margins of your distributors. And for that, you need to understand their business. You need to be able to sit with them and look at their income statements and then try to find ways to increase their income. So like I told you before, that the market was shrinking. The share of online was increasing and the amount of billing that distributors could do with us was decreasing. Then you should be able to look at the income sheet of the distributor and tell them this is where you're having extra cost. We can cut something here, and then we can still keep one of the field sales executives in the play for next year. And once you understand that, then only the distributor will take your advice a bit seriously. Another hard skill would be user research and FGDs. It depends on which kind of market you are. In telecom, you're in the market for, let's say, at least 1/4 of your month. And then you're meeting customers, you're understanding your customers well. But there will also be roles where you're not able to meet them face to face. In these roles, knowing the skill of user research, how to craft the right questions and how to understand the responses that they're giving, and also, let's say, hosting and managing focus group discussions online. These are some of the things which have become essential these days for even a sales role. These are some of the hard skills that will work for you. But hard skills, let's say, are 30 to 40% important in the job. This is a people job. So soft skills are very important in this role. In soft skills, I would say negotiation, communicating without ambiguity, and managing without authority, and managing upwards. So these are some of the skills that will come in very handy. These are not skills which you develop overnight. So don't worry about that. Once you start into the role, once you stick to the basics, you understand your product well, you pitch it well. And let's say you're talking to 10 people in a day, you just pitch them the same thing over and over and over again. And then after a month, something hits you. And then you realize that there's a better way of pitching it. And this is something that you only learn yourself, and you learn by looking at the reaction of others. So this is very similar to what stand-up comedians do. So stand-up comedians, they would go to different pubs before getting out their 1 hour special on Amazon Prime or Netflix. They'd go to different bars and pubs, and they would do their routines, and they would understand which punch is getting the most laughs. So sales is very much like that. So you pitch to 10 people, and then you see their reactions. And when you're pitching to the 11th person, your skill improves. So it doesn't happen overnight, but the more people you talk to, the more people that listen to you, and the more reactions that you see, the easy it becomes for you to sell to the next person. So, like I said, negotiation, communicating without ambiguity, managing without authority, and managing upwards are some soft skills that I would say will help you a lot in this role.
थैंक यू योगेश। तो ऑडियंस से भी लूंगा, जैसे एक सवाल मैं देख रहा हूँ टेक्नोलॉजी को लेकर। अदिति ने पूछा है, हाउ कैन टेक्नोलॉजी चेंज सेल्स ऑफ कंपनीज लाइक वोडाफोन हु आर हेवीली इन डेट। उसमें हेवीली इन डेट वाला पार्ट हम लोग एक बार इग्नोर करते हैं क्योंकि दैट्स नॉट रिलेवेंट फॉर सबके लिए। पर एक जनरल स्टेटमेंट ये है कि अगर हम लोग सेल्स एंड मार्केटिंग स्ट्रैटेजी बना रहे हैं अपने लिए, तो कैसे हम लोग टेक्नोलॉजी को यूज कर सकते हैं, कैसे टेक्नोलॉजी को लेवरेज कर सकते हैं जिससे कि हम लोग सक्सेसफुल हो सकें।
Okay. So a lot of the things that I'll tell you now will sound dystopian, because they would seem like it's technology is helping in policing you a lot. Like Big Brother is always watching you, but technology has helped ops team become more, I would say, efficient in a way, because they have put in these measures which make it impossible for people to cut slack. So, for example, the role of field sales executives is changing, and they do have applications, and now people can monitor if they went to X retailer or not by having those things geo-mapped. So they won't be able to mark their attendance unless they're at a particular retailer store. So if that the particular geolocation is marked in their app, and they can only mark their attendance for that day when they're at that particular store. This is one example of monitoring well if your people are actually in the field and going to the stores and getting the orders placed, or even giving the stock to your retailer. Another thing would be training opportunities have changed, and with the penetration of smartphone in the country, now we have applications like Oust, which a lot of corporate firms are using to train their people well. Oust is used to train field sales executives, to train even TSMs and distributors, and at times even zonal managers about anything new that the company wants to, let's say, diffuse in the market. On Oust, you can have, let's say, sessions and video lectures and even quizzes based on any new thing which is coming. If a company wants to make sure that every zonal manager understands the new implications of GST, they would create a training on these platforms, and then they would just ask everybody to do the training, and they can manage and they can track who is doing what. When this new law came, it became essential for all the managers in sales to know what it means, because the distributors would call you to understand what is GST, how am I going to lose money because of this. This is the first question they ask. How am I going to lose money because of it, and how can you save money from it? So similarly, so training has improved a lot with technology. Apart from that, tracking has improved a lot. So you can now send hourly metrics of your territory. Hourly metrics can be accessed on your phone. You can get notifications about fall in sales in any region. So if I'm managing 7 territories now on my app, I can get a notification about any dip that is happening. So it has become more real time. So tracking your performance has become more real time. And telecom firms are crazy. They track hourly things. So not every firm will track that, but telecom firm will send you a notification that today in that X territory you're not having good sale. Another thing is the wide scale use of WhatsApp for communication. So WhatsApp, I know it's a very famous tool, and it's one of the number one personal messaging services in India. But a lot of businesses are also using it, and WhatsApp groups are a common place these days. If you have a team of 100 field sales executives, and if you want them to know in the middle of the day that a scheme has changed, then that's the easiest way to do it, because that's an app which everyone has. There would be apps that some people have and some people would not have, but in these cases, WhatsApp becomes a common denominator and becomes a way of doing business. Many people would not agree with it. I'm not personally in favor of it, but it gets the job done. Apart from that, there's a lot of upselling and cross-selling happening through apps these days. So when, let's say, Airtel has to go to a person's house and they are installing broadband in that person's house. Now, the person who's going to install broadband, they would have an application and they would be able to sell Airtel digital TV. They will be able to sell Airtel's mobile connection to that person as well. And that can happen on the tablet that Airtel has given to that person who's in the home of a customer installing a broadband. And we can pitch them a bundled idea. These are new things which are happening, and we don't even need to make sure that the people who are going there understand all the offers. They can directly show the customers all the offers on their application. That see, I know about broadband. You can ask me anything about broadband, but you can look here. There's an Airtel mobile plan which offers X amount of data with this amount of speed, and also there's this digital TV plan which will give you Netflix for free for 1 month and all these things. So we're trying to make upselling and cross-selling easy. If we're getting a foot into a customer's door, we're not trying to lose that opportunity anywhere. These are some of the things which are changing these days.
ओके, थैंक यू योगेश। और एक और क्वेश्चन जो हमारे पास ऑडियंस से आया है ये है कि कोई सेल्स एग्जीक्यूटिव अगर अपने करियर में फास्ट ग्रो करना चाहता है, दे वांट कि जल्दी से मेरा प्रमोशन हो, जल्दी से मैं हायरार्की में ऊपर बढ़ूं, तो उसके लिए वो क्या स्टेप्स ले सकते हैं? इसमें दिस इज गोइंग टू बी मोर अलोंग द लाइंस ऑफ कि आपको क्या लगता है कि व्हाट हैव यू सीन एज अ गुड स्ट्रेटजी फॉर सक्सेस, तो आप क्या रेकमेंड करेंगे उसके लिए?
Okay, this is the most difficult question you asked throughout the day, and it depends on so many factors. Like in any job, it depends on your performance, but it also depends on the kind of team you have around you. How motivated is everyone around you? How understanding your manager is? Can your manager inspire your team to work, and do you even want to work with that person? There are a lot of environmental factors that come into this, but sales is still a bit more democratized than other roles that I have had, because numbers speak for themselves. You're given KPIs which you can measure every week. If your role is to increase the revenue market share of your territory, and if the role is to improve the overall revenue of the company and your distributors, then you can always pinpoint to them that these are my numbers, and this is why I should get ahead in life, and this is why I should get a promotion. Now, how do you go about doing that? That's something which doesn't happen very quickly in sales, because there are a lot of the things that you learn when you start doing the job. One of the things was how to pitch, which I just mentioned a few times over that you start learning by doing it. But I can at least tell you some of the things that I've learned during my tenure. And one such thing would be that there is no place for entitlement or ego in sales. So you are working with a lot of people. If I'm working with territory sales managers who are handling 40 distributors, then those distributors are small business owners. In their district, they're people who are known. They're people who have built a business, who support people in their community, and they have a lot of respect in the community. And this is the thing that even young salespeople need to understand, that if you respect the people that you do business with, then they will respect you. A kind word, a warm greeting can go a long way. Because people want to do business with people they like, and everyone will beat you on price. So if you think that I can give better prices, almost everyone who's working on scale will beat you on price. So you want to be the person that distributor wants to do business with. You want to be the person that retailer wants to do business with. And once you start building that, then you will see that your revenue is growing and the new connections are growing because your distributor wants to work for you. They want to help you get that next promotion. That's important in sales because it's not something that you can create overnight. It's not a product requirement doc that I can sit on for 4 days and I can create an exceptional document and then present it to my team and present it to my managers and then start working on it and build a great product. So a lot of the things are different because here your performance is derived from the performance of everyone you manage in sales. So in sales, even in the first role that you have, you'll be a manager, which is very different from other roles. In other roles, you are an individual contributor, you learn things, and then you get to manage people. In sales, from the first day, you're managing people. You're managing the field sales executives, you're managing the retailers, you're managing your distributors. And if you don't see it with that frame of mind, then you're not going to, let's say, succeed from the beginning. And like I said, there's no short-term trick to succeed in sales. You'll know your pitch, and then your pitch will improve. You'll know your people, and then your people will start liking you, and they'll try to work with you, and they'll try to, let's say, make sure that you get ahead in life. Another thing is when you pitch to people, always go by their interests. Don't go by what the company wants and how it will be beneficial for any other sense. Just go by their interest, and that's where understanding their income statements and all these things comes in handy. You tell them that see, this is how much you're selling today. If you sell X amount, then maybe we can keep one additional person on the staff. And also, if you do X amount extra, we will also pitch in and we'll give you a scheme which will help you keep that another person on the road. So if you say that I will give you $5,000 extra for this month if you sell from 100 to 150, then sometimes the person can take offense that that's not why I'm doing all these everything. But if you tell them that see, you have Pawan on your role, you know the person, he's been working with you for 10 years, and if you do enough business this month, then you won't have to let him go. We can keep him and he can keep supporting his family. So it's way of understanding and communicating the same thing in a different manner, which I've found that it works because it resonates. It gives you, let's say, more of a realistic grounding that, and the person will also respect you because then you're talking the language that they understand and they respond to. Other things would be, like I said, depend on data first and intuition will follow. So if from the first day, don't start going by a gut and just understand your territory, understand your data, understand where your sales are coming from, understand where your new connections are coming from, understand where your product is the strongest. If you understand your product, like we talked about earlier, it can be a digital product or a physical product. But if you understand where is the best market for it, then you'll do very well. For example, we used to do a lot of physical activities and a lot of ho-halla in areas where we knew that we had more towers than Vodafone and Jio. Because we knew that in those areas, we can compete on network. Our network was way better. And if we do some activities there, if we go to those retailers, then those retailers are more open to our product because they also know that our product is better. So you need to look into your data. You need to find the right place to pitch your product and the right people to pitch your product to. From a similar thing, knowing which marketing channel works for you is also important. If you are working in an area where people read a lot of newspapers and you're spending a lot of money on digital marketing, that makes no sense. If you're working in an area where people read newspapers, then use newspapers for your advertisement and marketing. If you're working in an area where it's youth-centric market and people listen a lot to FMs, then spend your spend your money there. So understanding which channel works for you is very important. And this is something which can come from user research, which we talked about earlier. You can go to your market and then talk to your customers and understand what works best for them. And yeah, this is the last thing I would say for a sales and operations role, that visit your markets. Don't take anyone else's word for it. Go to your markets. If you don't understand what's happening on the ground, if you don't understand what your customers are saying to your retailers, then you will not understand the deficiencies in your product And tomorrow you cannot bring those deficiencies to the product managers and tell them that this is lacking in our product. If in your payments bank app, if transactions are failing every single day and if nobody knows, then how is it going to get improved? They will also look at their data, but essentially if you know on the ground that this is what's happening and if you tell them, then that's how products get improved, and that's how you also know that this is what's lacking in my product, and then you can try to spend your energies in a different thing. So if you know that you're selling 10 products and if you know that one of the products is not working fine, then let others work on it, let it get improved, and meanwhile you sell 9 other products. But this can only come if you're visiting your market and you understand what's happening on the ground.
Thank you, Yogesh. That was very insightful. हम लोग अपनी वेबसाइट पे भी बच्चों को यही सिखाने की कोशिश करते हैं, जैसे l4o.in जहाँ पे हम लोग की कोर्सेज अवेलेबल है, तो हम लोग भी यही ट्राई करते हैं कि बच्चों को एक बैकग्राउंड दिया जाए, जो स्टूडेंट्स आते हैं यहाँ पे जॉब्स के लिए उनको एक बैकग्राउंड दिया जाए जिससे वो समझ सके कि अच्छा कस्टमर को समझा कैसे जाता है, प्रोस्पेक्टिंग कैसे की जाती है, ताकि वो एक स्ट्रैटेजी को समझ सके और उसको फिर ढंग से इंप्लीमेंट कर सके, या फिर मुझे अपना पिच प्रिपेयर कैसे करना है वो सीखा जाए, उनको सिखाया जाए। साथ साथ कि जैसे कि अगर मुझे किसी की हेल्प करने के लिए बैठना है, बैलेंस शीट में किसी की हेल्प करने के लिए बैठना है, तो एक मैथ्स एक बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट स्किल है। और समहाउ कहीं ना कहीं बहुत लोग होते हैं जिनको मैथ्स से डर लगता है कि अरे बेसिक अरिथमेटिक में ही लोगों को थोड़ा डरने लगता है, लेकिन अगर आप बेसिक अरिथमेटिक अच्छे से कर सकें तो कई लोग उसको इंटेलिजेंस से कोरिलेट करते हैं कि अगर आपकी मैथ्स अच्छी तो लोग समझते हैं कि आप स्मार्ट हैं, तो वो भी हम लोग हमारी वेबसाइट पे सिखाते हैं। तो जो लिसनर्स ये देखना चाहते हैं कि अच्छा कैसे वो ये सब स्किल्स डेवलप कर सकते हैं ताकि वो एक जॉब के लिए अप्लाई कर सकें, तो दे कैन चेक आउट हमारी वेबसाइट l4o.in। साथ ही साथ जो लोग ई सर्टिफिकेट लेना चाहते हैं इस वेबिनार के लिए, तो उसका लिंक डिस्क्रिप्शन में डाला हुआ है, तो आप डिस्क्रिप्शन में लिंक पे क्लिक करके ई सर्टिफिकेट के लिए जा सकते हैं। बट योगेश, बिफोर वी लीव आई हैव लॉट ऑफ अदर क्वेश्चंस एज वेल। सब लोग तो हम लोग शायद ना आंसर कर पाए, बट एक क्वेश्चन हम लोग यूजर्स की तरफ से और लेंगे। एक क्वेश्चन जो यूजर्स की तरफ से और आया है वो है, हाउ इम्पोर्टेंट इज डिजिटल प्रेजेंस फॉर अ कंपनी इन टुडेज टाइम? बहुत जनरल क्वेश्चन है, लेकिन अगर आप विद इन लेट्स से 3-4 मिनट्स बता दें तो हमारे पास शायद एक और क्वेश्चन का टाइम हो। आज के जमाने में डिजिटल प्रेजेंस की क्या इंपॉर्टेंस है किसी कंपनी के लिए, even if they're selling things on the ground?
Okay. I'm trying to create a boundary around this question. It's a very open question because you see, there are a lot of firms in the market, and there are people who are selling milk to people who are selling cryptocurrency out there in the market. So the range is huge. And if we just limit ourselves to people who are selling FMCG products and customers are buying FMCG products, then let's pick an example of a company who's selling chips, a company who's creating a new brand of banana chips for them. And for that company, let's try to understand this thing. Now, what is the reason for visibility for any company? The reason for visibility is catching customers where they are. That's why people used to have big billboards in the cities, that because the people would travel and they would see a big billboard and then they would understand, okay, yeah, there's this firm which sells X item. And that would create top of mind awareness for that customer. And they would remember that particular firm when they would go to a retail store. They would walk in and they would see, let's say, Lay's, and they would remember that, okay, I've seen the billboard, and they would buy that product. Now, when even the usage of digital means is changing with the amount of usage that's happening today. So roughly 5 hours is the time that an average Indian spends on their device today. So in a way that their phone is their car, their phone is the only thing that they're looking at for a lot of time. And how do you create top of mind awareness for these customers? And I believe that's why digital presence is important today for a lot of companies across different markets. So if you're selling chips, then also you have to get your ad in the ClickBuzz app or in TikTok or any other place, so that people who are on these apps, they understand, they see that, okay, this is a new brand, this is what they're pitching. And it can be a 15-second video ad also where you're just shouting out your USP and then you're getting away. It has become essential because that's where the people are. They've become the new billboards, the new newspaper front ads for the day, because no one is reading newspapers. People are just opening the Hindu app. And if you're not on the Hindu app, then you're not seen. Similarly, the digital presence is important because that's where the audience has gone. That's where the people with disposable income have gone. And to create any kind of top of mind awareness even big firms or small firms, they would have to invest some amount of their money into digital marketing and into reaching to the right customers. But there are a lot of channels today, and there are a lot of firms which will help you spend your money wisely. So don't just throw away money to any app or any kind of digital marketing channels. You can go to these firms who will tell you that, okay, if you want to reach the customer segment of 30 to 60 year olds who have X amount of disposable income and who have this kind of taste in music, then we will tell you which geography to target, which particular apps to target, and how to promote your business. So it can happen. The degrees of digital presence can change, but it has become essential because that's where your customers are spending all of your time.
That makes a lot of sense, Yogesh. आपने जो बोला एकदम रेजोनेट करता है कि जहां पर लोग हैं वहां हमें जाना जरूरी है. अगर लोग ऑनलाइन है तो हमें ऑनलाइन जाना होगा. सिमिलरली एक और चीज मैं वापस स्ट्रेस करूंगा जो आपने पिछले क्वेश्चन के रिस्पॉन्स में कहा था कि अगर मैं एक सेल्समैन हूं तो मुझे अपने कस्टमर की हेल्प करने के बारे में सोचना चाहिए. ये नहीं कि अच्छा ठीक है मैं कंपनी के पर्सपेक्टिव से सोचूं, बट रादर मैं अपने कस्टमर के पर्सपेक्टिव से सोचूं कि जो मैं बेच रहा हूँ वो कैसे हेल्प करेगा. ये भी मुझे लगता है कि एक बहुत इंसाइटफुल चीज है. और लोगों के मन में कहीं ना कहीं जो एक सेल्समैन का पुराने जमाने से इंप्रेशन बना हुआ है कि सेल्समैन कंजे को भी कंघी बेच के चला जाता है, उस इंप्रेशन से कहीं ना कहीं दूर कर रहा है. एक किसी को अगर लॉन्ग टर्म इस करियर में सक्सेसफुल होना है तो उसके लिए ये इंपॉर्टेंट है कि वो जेन्युइनली अपने कस्टमर की हेल्प करे और उसके लिए जो स्किल्स उसे चाहिए वो सीखे. एक आखिरी चीज जो मैं पूछना चाहता हूँ, वंस अगेन थोड़ा लंबा क्वेश्चन हो सकता है लेकिन फिर भी आई वुड लव टू गेट अ रिस्पॉन्स फ्रॉम यू ऑन दिस. और वो है कि कैसे अपना प्रोडक्ट या सर्विस पिच किया जाए और उसके लिए क्या क्या प्रिपेयर करना जरूरी है ताकि आपके पिच एक अच्छे से आप प्रेजेंट कर सकें.
Throughout the webinar, we've discussed all these things, so I don't think there's anything new which I can add abhi isme. But yeah, I think the major point is talking to the customer rather than talking about the company. The pitch should be about how you can make a customer's life easier. So when we were pitching Airtel Payments Bank for the first time to the customers, we're not telling them that it will be easier for you to recharge with Airtel Payments Bank and while you're sitting at your home and you won't have to go to a retail store and it would be much more easier. We were telling them the benefits about how it would make their lives easier. We were telling them about the 7.25% interest rate that they would get with that savings, which was not offered by any other bank at that time. We were telling them how we've tied up with the electricity board and now they won't have to stand in a line for 2 hours to pay their bills. This was essentially let's say 5-6 years ago. So we were telling them how it would save their time and how it would make their lives easier. That's the most important thing about creating your pitch. And knowing your product is very important. And when you know your product well, and that's where your pitch should come from. When you selling, let's say, an application, then it becomes a different pitch. If I'm selling Wink to a retailer, then I have to tell them that there are 100,000 songs in our library, and you can only find songs from you can only find Kishore Da songs on Wink. That becomes my selling point. That if you want Kishore Da songs, then you download Wink. Sawan doesn't have it, or some other platform doesn't have it. So knowing how your product is different from other products in the market, it's important from everyone who's selling their product. If the difference doesn't come easily, then just try to spend some time to find that, because there has to be a difference. There's always a difference. There's always a USP. Try to find that and include that in your pitch. Have a USP, speak to the customer, and as you're pitching to more and more customers, you will get the insight about how to pitch it better. Because out of 10 customers, let's say 4 or 5 of them are responding to a single thing, then that becomes the way you pitch it. Let's say I'm pitching a music app, and to the first 10 customers, I am telling them that it has 100,000 songs in the library. We are the only one with the Kishore Da songs. We will offer it free for everybody who has an Airtel connection. You won't be charged a subscription fee. And I'm telling 10 other things. And if I'm saying this to 10 customers, and if I'm getting the best reaction on the Kishore Da point, then to the 11th customer, I will only tell them about Kishore Da. So I would try to shorten my pitch because nobody has an attention span of 2 minutes to 3 minutes to listen to an entire pitch. So pitch improves as you talk to more people, as you get their reactions, and as you absorb what they're feeling and what is it that they want. And that's also something that you gain when you're in the market. Like I said, when you're in the market, when you're trying to talk to the customers, then it's a very quick learning curve. Otherwise, it's you're waiting for surveys, you're waiting for user research, you're waiting for somebody else to do a survey for you. But in sales, you get that freedom to just go out in the market. It's a part of your role. You're expected to be in the market. So you just go out in the market, you talk to your customers, and by talking to your customers, your pitch improves. There's no easier way to improving the pitch. It's a long thing. It will happen over time. It will happen by talking and talking and talking a lot. But what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to tell you that this is what worked for me. That if you try to do this, if you try to understand your product very well, if you try to make a list of the USPs and then you try to talk, then you once start talking to the people, then you'll get to know what works and what doesn't work. Every audience is different. Maybe to your manager, a different pitch will work. To your retailer, a different pitch will work. To your customers, a different pitch will work. And to your FSCs, a different pitch will work. If you're pitching it to your field sales executives, then you tell them about the USP, but you also tell them that if you install 5 of these apps today, you'll get $50 extra. But if you install 25 over the week, you get $100 extra. So there's a different way of pitching to your FSCs because they have a different incentive. They are downloading that app in your customer's phone because they're getting money from you for that. So you know what's important for the person that you're pitching, and then you start from there. But there also you will learn a lot. If you have 100 FSCs, you pitch to first 5 and you get a different reaction for them. Then when you're pitching to the 6th one, your pitch will improve.
और एक और चीज जो मैंने आज सीखी वो मैं ऑडियंस के लिए एक बार फिर से रिपीट करना चाहता हूँ कि पूरे इस डिस्कशन में जैसे योगेश ने बताया कि हम लोग जब सोचते हैं एयरटेल के बारे में तो वी थिंक ऑफ अ टेलीकॉम कंपनी, लेकिन एयरटेल ने खुद को डाइवर्सिफाई करने के लिए एयरटेल पेमेंट्स बैंक और विंक जैसे प्रोडक्ट्स के बारे में काफी बात की. तो क्योंकि काफी क्वेश्चंस टेक्नोलॉजी को लेकर आए हैं कि जैसे बिजनेस चेंज हो रहा है, जैसे वर्ल्ड चेंज हो रहा है, तो टेक्नोलॉजी का क्या रोल है. और मुझे ये समझ में आया कि कंपनी के लिए टेक्नोलॉजी के साथ खुद को अडाप्ट करना जरूरी है. और शायद हम लोगों को एमबीए में एक स्टोरी सुनाते हैं या फिर एक कॉमन एनेक्डोट चलता है कि कोई कंपनी थी जो घोड़ा गाड़ी के लिए चाबुक बनाती थी जिससे कि घोड़े को चलाया जाए, पर उसकी बजाय अगर वो और जब घोड़े गाड़ी चली गई और जब कार्स आ गई तो देन दे कैन गो आउट ऑफ बिजनेस. उसकी बजाय इफ दे थॉट ऑफ देमसेल्व्स एज एन इग्निशन सिस्टम, अच्छा ठीक है अब मैं चाबुक नहीं बनाऊंगा, अब मैं कार्बोरेटर बनाऊंगा जिससे गाड़ी स्टार्ट हो. तो दैट्स अ डिफरेंट वे ऑफ थिंकिंग इट, क्योंकि जो पर्पस है आई हैव टू थिंक ऑफ कि मेरा पर्पस क्या है और उसके हिसाब से मैं खुद को अडैप्ट करूं. व्हाट्स योर टेक ऑन दिस योगेश?
No, this is absolutely essential for any business to survive. So we all know that Wipro started as a sunflower oil company, and that's why they still have that logo of sunflower. So if you don't change, if a company is not adapting, they'll surely go out of business. And even the companies which are today, if they do the same things 10 years to 15 years down the line, they won't be in business. So even the new age companies which are in edtech, let's say Byju's or any other things, in 10 years, there will be a different way of understanding education and doing that. If telecom firms, they don't keep buying firms which can send satellites in space, they'll go out of business. That's why you see Airtel and Jio and everybody is investing in satellites for that space. So the scope and the field is changing so fast that anybody who has to stay in business, they have to reinvent themselves. How many companies are there which which have lasted 100 years? They've lasted 100 years. If they lasted 100 years, you can count them on your fingers. And the reason is that they kept adapting and they kept, let's say, changing with the needs of their customers. They kept identifying what is it that the customers want and how do I become the first company or the second company to provide that to the customers. And I think there's one correlation with sales skills here. They are also very transferable. So these skills are also something which once you learn them, then you can use them in all the different roles that you have in your life. So very similar to the technology companies which are changing and adapting themselves. These skills help you adapt in your career. So I've been in product for a long time now, and I've been using a lot of the skills that I developed when I was working in sales. Because understanding people, understanding the way you pitch and understanding your product is something which is a commonplace thing now for every role. And that's what I would say, that it doesn't matter how long you do sales. Those skills are very transferable and you will benefit from those skills for a long time.
Thank you, Yogesh. एक बार फिर से मैं हमारे ऑडियंस को रिमाइंड कराना चाहता हूँ कि they can check the description जहाँ पर e-certificate के लिए उनको लिंक मिल जाएगा. They can fill the form and they can get the e-certificate. Also, you can subscribe to our channel. जैसे इस बार योगेश ने हमें enlighten किया सेल्स के बारे में. नेक्स्ट संडे नेक्स्ट वीक हमारे साथ एक नए गेस्ट होंगे और एक नए टॉपिक पे हम उनके साथ बात करेंगे एंड होपफुली आपके लिए वो वैल्यू ऐड करेगा. हमारी स्टूडेंट्स की कम्युनिटी भी एग्जिस्ट करती है टेलीग्राम पे, जिसका लिंक भी डिस्क्रिप्शन में है, जो आप चेक कर सकते हैं. And we wish you happy learning. Thanks a lot, Yogesh, for joining us. This was really insightful. For me, I can assure you that it was very insightful, and I'm sure हमारे students के लिए, हमारे listeners के लिए बहुत insightful रहा होगा. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Rahil. Thanks for the invite.